The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, as we turn to the Middle East now, has visited the Rafah border crossing and has made a renewed call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. His call comes as the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza said 19 people waiting for aid were killed by Israeli forces. Israel has denied firing on the crowd. Mr. Guterres said it is time to silence the guns, in his words, and stop the nightmare, describing the ongoing loss of life in Gaza as a moral outrage, and called on Israel to give total, unfettered access to humanitarian goods throughout the territory.
It's time to truly flood Gaza with life-saving aid. The choice is clear, either surge or starvation. Let's choose the side of help, the side of hope, and the right side of history.
That was Antonio Guterres. Well, let's speak to our Middle East correspondent, Yolande Knell, who is in Jerusalem for us. Hi, Yolande. Thanks for joining. Now, how has the mounting pressure on Israel to give more aid to Gaza, allow more access to aid, been received by Israel?
I mean, we have seen changes in the past few weeks with Israel opening up a new border crossing in the north of the Gaza Strip. In particular, we've seen the start of this marine route bringing aid in by sea, and of course the airdrops continuing over the Gaza Strip, but still massive aid shortages being reported. Now, Israel has hit back against those comments by Mr. Guterres. The foreign minister was very critical of him, calling him somebody who had allowed the UN to become, in his words, an anti-Semitic and anti-Israel body. You had Kogat, part of the Israeli Defense Ministry that really oversees the crossings into the Gaza Strip, putting out a picture which it said showed a lot of aid that was awaiting distribution by the UN inside Gaza. So the Israeli claim is it's really the speed of distribution, problems with that on the UN side and by aid agencies that is to blame here. But yes, this overall question has not gone away. I mean, it was very powerful. The UN Secretary General standing on the Egyptian side of the Rafah crossing next to a long line of lorries backed up there, which have got, life-saving aid that is so desperately needed on the other side in Gaza.
And Yolande, meanwhile, there are still calls for a ceasefire in various parts of the world. What progress have we seen, if any, when it comes to the talks mediated by Qatar?
So these indirect talks are continuing in Doha. You have Israeli negotiators there, Hamas negotiators there, and you have the Qataris, the Egyptians and the US all involved in the mediation effort. What we've heard from an Israeli official is that the US has put forward what they're calling a bridging proposal, basically to try to close the gap between the two sides on a deal, on a formula for how many Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails would be released for each of some 40 Israeli hostages that it's proposed would be released by Hamas as part of a new deal. We haven't yet heard a response from Hamas on that. It's discouraging that the top Israeli negotiators are said to have left Doha now, awaiting that response. And we heard from a Palestinian official who is very close to the talks that still these deep differences remain between the two sides. I mean, the overall main sticking point is that Hamas wants Israel to completely withdraw its troops from Gaza. It wants any deal basically to pave the way to a complete end to the war, whereas Israel is saying that this really has to be a temporary ceasefire that's being talked about, and that in the end it wants the war to resume so that it can completely dismantle Hamas.
And Yolande, meanwhile, we've been reporting on protests, weekly protests in Tel Aviv. What more can you tell us about those?
These protests, you feel they're getting more and more desperate. There are a number of people who were arrested by Israeli police last night, accused of sort of disturbing public order. The families of the hostages really just want a deal to be done now to bring their loved ones home, and they want a deal to involve all of the hostages. It's thought that there are about 130 hostages remaining in the Gaza Strip already. The Israeli defense officials have said they think about more than 30 of those have been killed, have died in captivity. There's another disturbing video that's been put out by Hamas in the past day where it says that a hostage has died because of starvation and because of the lack of supplies getting into Gaza. That's all just going to add to the worry and the public pressure on the Israeli government to come up with a deal.
All right, Yolande, thank you so much for that update.